also teaches the inevitable consequence of doing it. And the inevitable consequence is that your third world society rapidly degrades into a third world society. Because the white people stop being hyper-productive white people. As this guy notes, I'll avoid this mistake in the future. Stop doing excess work. Well, there goes the profitability, the productivity of the first world culture. And without that, what's left? What's left? Everyone operating at half speed. It becomes a degraded third world society. And of course, it's not just the money. And Mary King here. It's also the violence. Because lower IQ people have poorer emotional control, have more incentive because they're unproductive, and steal other people's resources. Look at this. This is graphs are share of the blue column is share of the Minnesota population. And the red column is the share of violent crime within Minnesota. Black people, 6.4% of Minnesota is black people. They commit 60% of the violent crime. Tenfold their numbers in the general population. That's a third world culture. Black people in America, our African Americans, far too many of them, are effectively a third world culture embedded in the American body politic. That's why the urban centers look that way. That's why they vote for the people they vote for. That's why they never get better. Just like we poured trillions of dollars into Africa, and all it did was make the problems worse and more numerous. We've done the same with our urban centers. We pour enormous sums of money in there. Do they get better? Is there any meaningful improvement? Ever? You can't give things to the third world and make things better. It's not possible. It's simply a black hole for resources. That's how South Africa ended up the way it did during the apartheid era. Those blacks who came into South Africa, white South Africa from all over Africa, they didn't produce any resources, they only consumed. And the white South Africans who created that entire first world culture in Africa, reasonably enough said, well, we're not just going to give away what we've made to people who don't do anything. And that's how they ended up with that apartheid culture. Of course, then America and other nations conspired to destroy South Africa, like we conspired to destroy Rhodesia. It's what we do. Conspired to destroy the Belgian Congo. Politically correct people, you're not supposed to say that kind of thing. The second reason is, in their heads, diversity means good restaurants, or at least interesting restaurants. I'll tell you one thing, I'll never eat Indian food again. He writes, across nearly all groups, in all times, people want to be around people with similar worldview, income, and priorities. Isn't that how human beings self-sort? Haven't they always self-sorted that way? And look, he's responding to this article by the New York Times. Now, of course, the article was written in 2007, almost 20 years ago. I doubt the New York Times would write this today. But the downside of diversity, they wrote, it's become increasingly popular to speak of racial and ethnic diversity as a civic strength, and as Governor Tim Walz just did yesterday. Isn't it great? In our schools, we have 50 different languages spoken, as if that were a good thing. New York Times continues, from multicultural festivals to pronouncements from political leaders, the message is the same. Our differences make us stronger. But a massive new study in 2007, based on detailed interviews of nearly 30,000 people across America, has concluded just the opposite. Harvard political scientist Robert Putnam has found that the greater the diversity in the community, the fewer people vote. And the less they volunteer, the less they give to charity and work on community projects, because there is no community. A community can only exist among similar people. In the most diverse communities, the study found, neighbors trust one another about half as much as they do in the most homogeneous settings. The study, the largest ever on civic engagement in America, found that virtually all measures of civic health are lower in more diverse settings. So diversity is not our strength, my friends. Diversity is our demise. Oh, here's a lengthy comment. A tip on locals. I wonder if that's the first one of those I've ever gotten. Well, it's only $1. But I'll read it. Writes Victor Davis Hanson argued that we need to revitalize citizenship. I suggest that foreigners, let me move this over so you don't have to look at the side of my head. I suggest that foreigners who did not inherit the weight of the responsibility of citizenship by the tradition of American parents eschew their responsibilities and dilute the weight of citizenship. Should citizenship privileges be restricted to the posterity of the colonists? I think, and by the way, Victor Davis Hanson, if you don't know him, is a brilliant historian, and he produces a ton of political commentary now. I think he really just started doing that like in the last year. Very, very smart guy, very insightful guy. I would challenge Victor Davis Hanson on a well thought out position with great caution. But I will say this. Victor Davis Hanson is about a decade older than me, a little more, I think, than a decade older than me. He's very much a boomer. And the boomers were all brainwashed to believe this lie, that American citizenship is just an idea, anybody can do it. And they were very brainwashed to believe that really people around the world, anybody can be an American, just a swappable widget into a first world culture or a nation of immigrants, all that kind of stuff. And it's very difficult to break people free of that brainwashing. So in Victor's mind, what he's imagining, I would think, is that we should only give citizenship to third world peoples who genuinely, in their heart, want to be true American citizens. And we should not be giving it to third world peoples who don't really mean that. They're just here to exploit America economically. And that would be a belief that's common to his generation. But it's wrong. Because it's built on a faulty premise. It's built on the premise that third world peoples in any sizable numbers are capable of being third worlders. And it's just not the case. America had extreme difficulty assimilating sizable numbers of migrants from other European nations with similar cultural heritage, with similar religious heritage. Very difficult. Lots of problems. Integrating Irish, Germans, Italians, descendant of Italian immigrants. Italians caused a lot of problems in this country when they first came over, and with a lot of effort, successfully assimilated. But America has zero demonstrated success in assimilating any sizable numbers of people from a third world culture. And that's because they just can't. America changed to a model in which only people of British descent could now claim American citizenship. I don't think that would work, because I think, well, there's people like me, multi-generational, born in America, obviously completely America assimilated. Maybe that's the rule. Maybe if you've been here for a certain number of generations, you can qualify for American citizenship. But I don't think we need to get there, because that's not where our problems are. You know, that difficult, ambiguous middle space is where people like to argue when they don't want a solution. They'll say, well, you can't solve the problem unless you can find this, concrete, specific definition of citizenship that everybody would simultaneously agree on. I don't think that's right. I think we can greatly improve our of people from third world nations, we will not have any citizenship problems in America. So I think that's the answer. Oh my God, we got a bunch of super chats on a members only show. Jake says, end the H-1B scam. I don't even like to say that. I think you have an extra word there. Just end H-1B. Because when you say end the scam, and maybe that's what you mean, is end it entirely. But there's a lot of people out there like, oh, we need to reform it, we need to fix it. You can't reform it. There's no way to reform it. What is the abuse? The abuse is that Indians come on H-1B. 80% of H-1Bs are Indians with fraudulent academic and work credentials. And by the way, they just raided a academic degree mill in India yesterday and grabbed about 1 million diplomas. I mean, people just buy these things. So they have fraudulent academic and work credentials, and then when they get here, they get into a hiring position and they engage in ethno-fascist, nepotistic hiring practices, fire all the Americans, hire more Indian nationals. I guess there's two options, right? We could try to fix that, right? Somehow stop that from happening. I don't know how you would do that. Or, I think it's much more simple and straightforward. Just stop it. It's like with the Somalians. I mean, in an American society that provides a welfare safety net to people who need help, you can't also have Somalians. Because they'll just steal all the money like they're doing. And if you try to put up guardrails sufficient to prevent Somali theft, the program can't run. It would just be so inefficient, it would be... It would be not practicable to run it. So the answer is not to let the money be stolen, and the answer is not to put up so many guardrails that it can't be practicable. The answer is get rid of the Somalis. And then you can have a social welfare safety net in a high IQ, high trust, low fraud, first world society. The same is true with H-1B. Indians are no less third world than Somalis. There's no difference. There's no substantive cultural difference. The solution to the H-1B fraud that's happening is to get rid of the fraudsters. And then you don't need H-1B. Niall, $2 says, for some, fraud is a feature, not a bug. Yeah, that's right. Fraud is an opportunity. These people, it's almost like they have magic glasses. Right? Where you and I, we walk around and just go about it, and they put on these magic glasses, and everywhere they look, they see opportunities for fraud. That's just the way their culture is built. Because in their low trust, high fraud, third world culture, that's how you need to operate. If you lived in that culture, you would operate that way too. That's why first world cultures are so fragile. It doesn't take much to break down that high trust and find yourself suddenly living in a third world culture where you have to engage in fraud and scheming simply to not be overtaken by the others who are all doing it. Will Crump, $5 says, 2 judges have stopped Trump from now ending TPS. Keeps 60,000 non-citizens on American soil. SCOTUS says no jurisdiction. They ignore SCOTUS. I'll have to catch up on those cases. I'll probably read them over the weekend. I saw those decisions in the news, but I haven't read the orders. Digging with Dawn, $5. Did you hear about the people on X who want to not pay taxes? They even mentioned it on Fox. But what's the point of that? So, I mean, just think about what happens. You don't pay the taxes, and people with guns come. I mean, you've just made it a hot war then. Except you've made it from the most vulnerable position possible where they can just come and cherry pick each person one at a time. If it's gonna be a hot war, we may as well just go hot. Do it from a position of strength. Don't do it from a position of weakness. Sell Brown, $20. Thank you so much, man. It says you don't go far enough. You need people who have Judeo-Christian ethics. The mayor of New York swore into office today on the Quran. How does that reflect our forefathers' understanding and creation of the Constitution? Yeah, I agree with that. I think Islam and first world cultural values are completely incompatible with each other. Third world culture is completely incompatible. I mean, so this guy Vivek Ramaswamy is running for governor, a cultural Indian, claims to be an American citizen, but I don't think he is under the 14th Amendment. Because he was born on U.S. soil, his parents were Indian nationals. The 14th Amendment would not recognize him. The men who ratified the 14th Amendment would not recognize Vivek Ramaswamy, born to foreign nationals, as an American citizen. But he's running for governor, and people are criticizing him, as happens in politics, and he's threatening to sue everybody. And the Indian nationals are saying, yeah, he should sue everybody. I don't like the words they're saying. Indians don't really have a cultural understanding. They don't understand honor. They don't understand fraud. They don't understand integrity. And they don't understand fundamental principles of the first world, like free speech. They don't, because they're third world. All the third world peoples on the globe, they don't really understand free speech. Not in any visceral, cultural sense. Kibble Wibble says we're reaching peak demoralization. We'll have chaos and anarchy before they put the boots on our necks. You know, I'll say this. I have confidence in our culture. I have confidence in our nation. That doesn't mean I'm certain of victory. There are powerful forces against us. We're a small minority on this battlefield. 92% of the world hates us and wants to kill us. Those are pretty tough odds. And it's possible that we lose. But I will say this. And of course, it's not going to be, don't imagine it's going to be, somehow something will snap and we'll have an incessant series of wins. That's not how it works. Often it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward. Number of things to go right, and if they go right, they act as catalysts for each other. It becomes a cascade of things going right. So if we can get rid of migrants, well, then that inherently cleans up a large chunk of our voting problem. If we can clean up our voting problem, that gets rid of a large chunk of the remigration debate. And the same with spending, and the same with taxing, and the same with everything else. So we don't need a lot of things to go right, but they do need to be the decisive things that we do need. Jake says, yep, and it's sad. What's worse is, as a black person, I see so much racism from black people. It needs to end. And if people like me try and change it, and then your comment ends there. But there's another one, another $5 here. I'm disappointed in the speed of the arrest, if there even are any being arrested. Have any Somalis been arrested? Since the news broke? Since Nick's news report came out? I don't know if they have. I don't know if they have. And this is, I mean, I didn't know Jake was black until he just told us, but, and I have black friends. And this is a very perilous period for black Americans who are fully assimilated Americans, who are productive members of our society. Because the third world is forcing us, because of the sheer mass of the problem, it's forcing us to deal with people on a categorical basis. We don't have the time to screen every Indian, to find an occasional one who it might be beneficial for us to keep. They all gotta go. We don't have time to find the imaginary Somalian who might be a benefit to America. They all have to go. And unfortunately, we have a large African American population that functions as third world. And frankly, we've put up with it. Because we all know black people who are productive members of society. But the worse these problems get, the less interested the majority productive of the population, the white people, are about making fine distinctions within a group. That's not good for productive black people who are assimilated American citizens. They're going to get bucketed in with the bad guys. It's perilous. Cardinal O'Flanagan, $5. Some groups come and build things like cathedrals, and others build fraud empires. As an example, fake daycare. See a difference in ideals there. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's why they burn our cathedrals down. They just burned down another beautiful church in Amsterdam yesterday. I'm sure it was just an accidental fire, right? Box Fort defendant $5. To your point, nearly half of Ellis Island immigrants between 1880 and 1930 remigrated because they couldn't hack it here. I actually didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I know when my Italian ancestors came here, I mean, there was certainly no welfare. In those days, there was a lot of canal construction happening in New York. And a lot of my ancestors they got shovels. They just dug in the dirt. They dug canals with shovels. I mean, the early 1900s. They were digging with shovels. They were just, raw labor. And of course, in a foreign culture, and some Italians went into a life of crime. That wasn't my family, but I've known plenty of Italians who went that way. I grew up in the New York area. I encountered them in day-to-day life. That happened too. And how long did it take us to get rid of the mafia? I mean, that was a multi-decade effort. Bill Jurgen says, Andrew, can you please show the new mug and a link to buy it? So I don't have the new mug yet. I'm going back and forth with my graphics guy with the design. That's why it wasn't ready. Maybe I have an image I can share here. So he sent me, it's a little movie. Here, let me see if I can download this and play it for you guys. It's not physical. It's a generated thing. Yeah. And all I have to do is approve it, and it'll be immediately available because it's an on-demand type of product. Here, let me pull this up. So this is the mug I want. I want a mug. It's always the same map mug. So of course I'm talking about this map, right? The worldwide IQ map. The fact that it's first world nations that have 100 IQ, the highest IQ average, because you have to have that level of IQ to have a first world culture. And so I'm asking him to put it on a mug, something like this. So the map, and then on the back it says, as I always say, it's always the same map. So it's going to look something like that. But we don't have it finalized yet. So I'm talking with them. I have a meeting. We got a big staff meeting tomorrow. So I'm going to try to get the final version ironed out. And hopefully by Monday, the mug link will be changed from the current Branca Frescotis mug to that one. That is my hope. Let's see. These super chats are the whole show is super chats, which I don't mind, of course. Spud Ruckus $5 says, "Oh my God, is this how they make you write, or are you drunk?" Diversity ravages community engagement and lowers birth rates. White women psychologically react as in wartime, lowered fertility, increased miscarriages. Yeah, I'm going to presume this is how the YouTube filter on Super Chats is making you write. It's terrible. You have my sympathies. Yeah, but I agree 100% with what you're describing. That's another thing, by the way. They say, well, we have to import these migrants because the birth rate is down. The birth rate is down because you broke society, in large part by importing these migrants. Human beings naturally have babies, or we wouldn't be here. You've created a hostile environment for having babies. All we have to do is remove the hostile elements. Make living and having children and owning a home and all those things, make it affordable again, as it's been affordable for all of human history until we stole all the money from the people who produce it to give it to people who don't. I'd rather be skiing. $10 says, in Jesus' name, I pray you all have a blessed, safe, and prosperous 2026. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, the people he chose for his inheritance. Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. And the same to all of you. Box Fort defendant $5. Right. I remember that guy. Oh my God, what was his name? That was the guy who drove through the Christmas parade. And he represented himself in court ultimately, and he stacked up a bunch of boxes on the table to create a little fort for himself. It was crazy. $5 meaning even the most potentially compatible immigrants don't always assimilate. Yeah, and I have to ask, I mean, the question needs to be, what can this person do for me? Why is it in America's interest to bring this person in? I understand why it's in the third world's interest to enter America, but why is it in America's interest to have any particular person? And if they're third world, there should be an overwhelming presumption that they cannot contribute. They just can't. They're incapable. If they're first world, I would still put them through a rigorous examination. Why is it in my interest to have you in my house? In my national house? And as you know, I believe almost all of this is driven by IQ. That's why we're going to have the IQ map. That's why I always tell you it's the same map. And as I say, there's nothing that can be done about this. We cannot make the third world smarter because it's genetically coded. And how do we know it's genetically coded? Well, in many ways, but this is one of the most simple. If you look at closely related people, people who are closely related genetically, siblings, children, and parents, the more closely related they are genetically, the more strongly their IQs correlate. People of a given IQ have children of a similar IQ. So siblings have similar IQs. And that's true whether the IQs are high or the IQs are low. And I've seen a bunch of posts recently making the argument that the reason, when you look at the IQ map, the first world cultures all started they started in Europe, which has a winter. There's a cold climate. And the argument is that, well, when you live in a warm place like Africa, the climate's the same all the time. The things like food supplies, water supplies, are at the same level of availability all the time. There may be a low level, and Africa traditionally was always starving, but it's at the same level every day of the year because there's not much change in the weather, the climate. You don't need to plan, right? The food that's available in March will be about the same as the food that's available in April, and May, and June. But if you live in a cold climate, you die with that attitude. There's months of the year where there's no plants to gather. There's no game to hunt. So you have to have stored food. And you have to be thinking about this months ahead. And just imagine starting from day zero, and there are people in your population who engage in that kind of planning and foresight, and people who don't. Well, the people who don't die. That was a very rapid, it's an evolutionary pressure that's driving.
clouding up again.
It's not a great replacement theory that white people, first world cultures, are being replaced by non-white third world people. It's a great replacement reality. Just this year, 3.6 million foreigners, third worlders, will invade America. 10 to 15 million will enter by the end of Joe Biden's term. Of course, we know it was way more than that. Each will probably have 3 to 5 kids on average, while native-born Americans have 1.5. Why do native-born Americans only have 1.5? Because our resources, you need resources to raise children, our resources are taken from us and given to other non-white third world people so they have the resources to have more kids. There are resources stolen from us. Truly the most depressing story ever.
So it's getting too cloudy, so I'll have to take a break.